oversimplifying every entry in the SCP Wiki so you don't have to. Let's continue the study. This is a child who began rapidly gaining weight when he entered adolescence. He ran away from home, ate something in the woods, came back, and now he is contained within this silk chrysalis. And there's nothing solid within the chrysalis, it's all been reduced to genetic liquid, but he's forming into something else that we don't yet know what is. This is a old piece of medical equipment, probably like an IV stand. Whenever someone enters its proximity, they are transported to another dimension. It looks like this other reality is a reality in which an XK class end of world scenario occurred, which is the Foundation's word for the apocalypse. This is a man who does everything except age backwards. So he does every action backwards. He eats backwards. You do not want to know how he uses the bathroom. This is a man whose body has been primarily replaced with metal and cybernetic parts. He no longer has a tongue, but he does have a vocal transducer that he will talk through. His eyes are still intact, but they're held by wires and metal and everything, and the rest of his body is kind of held that way too. This is a cloud of nanomachines that will bond with a child younger than 14. Whenever the child feels endangered, they will turn into whatever the child imagines. These are a pair of flood lamps that will always cast the shadow, a single shadow of a woman. Throughout its cycle, there's like kind of a story that it tells of this woman finding an untimely demise. But once that cycle is over, the lamps will turn off. If you're in the room when the lamps turn off, you will be obliterated. This is a Mars rover that was on its way to Mars to take photos of the surface of Mars, and it lost connection. And then a couple days later, it starts sending photos. And those photos are like from Mars, but there are also some from Earth, and there's some from in between. These are a particular kind of cola bottle, and if you drink a certain amount or more from any of these bottles, you will never need to sleep ever again. The other benefit is all of your cognitive functions are much faster. The downside is none of your physiology is upgraded, so you eventually just run yourself into the ground. This is an Egyptian male who has been around for as long as we can tell, and he emits this radiation that heals anybody of practically all physical ailments. This is a tumbler of brown liquid, and when anyone starts to consume the liquid, the other people now are trapped. Whenever the person drinking the liquid says something about the liquid or the drink, like it's smoky, the people in the containment area will start coughing up this smoky substance. This is a mansion flooded to 4 meters with an unknown substance. But when you are caught in the substance, you fall asleep immediately and you're kind of suspended. This is a building whose structure has been completely replaced by really sharp pieces of paper. At some point, the Foundation wanted to try and tear down the building, but a wall of this paper fell down, flew everywhere, and just started shredding through everything. This is a machine that randomly improves parts of organic material. So take your arm and it will do something to make your arm. The improvements are random, so you can't choose what's improved. It sounds similar to Mr. Handy from Fallout. This is a teenage boy who can sever the bonds between atoms at a moment's notice. He was discovered because he vaporized his girlfriend when they were doing it. Whoops, got a little too freaky. This is a Foundation agent who is medically dead, but his body is still sustained by a liquid that now flows in his veins that is gray and kind of a metallic substance. In some way, it's connected to the Church of the Broken God, which is something that we will talk more about later. This is a pair of glasses that if you wear it for a long amount of time, it will make you think that inanimate objects have personalities and are animate. There was a guy who wore these for a long time and just kind of went crazy because he thought everything around him was animate and had a name and a personality. This is a safe with 7 dials. All of those dials go from 0 to 9. The door to the safe always opens, but it opens to a different compartment based on the combination input on the 7 dials. So there's upwards of 4 million different potential compartments you could open. This is a virus with 100% infectivity rate, and it slowly turns your body into metal clockwork. And it does this from the inside out. So this is a huge organism that's like 1,800 kilograms in mass, but it's comprised of lampreys, so tiny parasitic eel-like things. This is an expansion and kind of a perfection on Nikola Tesla's earthquake machine. It's able to create specific earthquake-like results in a small area. So kind of like an earthquake gun. You can set really precise measurements and settings, and it will cause what looks like an earthquake, but only to like one building or one room or one area. This is one person that is continually referenced as two different people. And kind of about half the time he goes by Ollie, and the other half the time he goes by Ormond. But in any case, anyone interacting with him will see two versions of him. These are gold tweezers that will cause the person to start taking off the person's hair and like organizing the hair by size. And then they'll start taking other body parts until there are none left to take. This is a coffin in a series of burial tunnels in Italy. If someone who is alive lays in the coffin, a cloned version of that person will walk out of the tunnels. The Foundation actually uses this phenomenon to maintain a lot of their workforce. This is a photo album of a couple's vacation gone wrong. If somebody who is in a relationship views the photo album for long enough, they'll start to see their significant other interacting with this mysterious person in the photos. And that person becomes obsessed with trying to prove their significant other's innocence, even though that is not real at all. So this is an old grandfather clock, but it doesn't seem to work. It still continues to chime though. So when it does chime, everyone in its vicinity will age an undetermined amount of time. There was a couple that bought this clock, put it in their house, thought it was broken, let it keep chiming, and a couple days later, they went missing because they aged so much that they collapsed. These are two metal spheres. One of them is in space and nothing can change its orbit, so it's immovable. And then there's another metal sphere. It is unstoppable, so it will go through everything and anything. So it's theorized that terrible things will happen if they collide. This is a puzzle box with the word fear scrawled in white ink on the top lid, but if someone opens it, the pieces will change to be something terrifying to that person. This is an incredibly accurate astronomical computer that will predict where certain things will be in space at a given time. The date doesn't go any further than a specific date in the future. Foundation scientists have predicted that maybe something bad will happen then. This is a blank Polaroid photo that when you look at it, it will basically develop whatever's in your subconscious. So it's used for psychiatric treatment by the Foundation, and the images can vary based on your emotional state. This is a parasitic colony that feeds on electrical charge. So if there's an electrical charge that the colony detects, they will move towards it and then form whatever connection, power plug they need to connect to that power and drain it. So it just looks like a mangle of wires. This is a man who is incapable of negative emotions, and he secretes this pheromone that's very similar to heroin. So anybody that inhales or intakes the pheromone around him just becomes immediately super happy, and they do anything that he wants them to. He doesn't refer to himself as gay in the modern understanding. He just sees himself as a very happy guy. This one is ultra dark. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering involved. It's all surrounding the Scarlet King. There's more beyond this entry about the Scarlet King that we'll get into later. This is a children's toy that was mass produced in the 1950s because of a franchise called Jack Proton. If you are aware of Jack Proton and the Jack Proton franchise, you will perceive yourself as a character from the Jack Proton franchise. This is a metal polyhedron that has 23 sides and changes the laws of math around it to be a base 23 setup instead of base 10. Around this polyhedron, the calculations take 23 times faster to complete. This is a creature that shows up in an area of remote forest somewhere. Whenever there's an enclosed space created in this area, this fish will show up. If that fish is hurt or the enclosed area is opened, the fish will travel back to its own dimension, and that will cause a huge implosion. These are records that, when played, will skip every once in a while, and the people and the objects in the area of the record being played will freeze. This is a swarm of near microscopic crabs that will work together in their swarm to look like anything. So they can look like a door, they can look like a cabinet. If there's enough of them, they can look like a house. A defensive mechanism of theirs is they will raise their pincers, which will then cause an explosion equal to 20 pounds of C4. This is a man who made 16 statuette dolls come to life, and they're all interactive. And then at some point, he broke I guess, and then he fell apart, and he was also made of the same clay and resin that the dolls are made of. This is a series of underground tunnels. They start out looking like rock, and then they start looking like skin tissue or internal organ tissue, and then eventually the walls will speak. This is a child with extremely powerful reality bending powers. We haven't come across the reality bender yet. Essentially, they're just beings that are able to rewrite reality in any way that they see fit. This is one of the most powerful instances, and so whenever she feels endangered, she will rewrite reality to keep herself safe. This is another entry that involves a reality bender. There is a pilot who crashed his fighter plane in World War II, and he came across a reality bender, and he asked him if there was a way that he could fix his plane, and so the reality bender made it so that the breath of the pilot would power the plane. This is a cookbook whose recipes change depending on who's opening it, and if the person who opened the cookbook makes one of the recipes and eats it, they will suffer severe anaphylactic shock, but everybody else will be okay. So make the food, but don't eat it. This is a pool that will take any substance put into it and turn it into sterile water. And you can interact with it and be in the pool. You just don't want to fall asleep or drink any of the water. This is a mass of batteries that will cause groups of inanimate objects around it to become animated. This was found at an animation studio, and it had animated a bunch of desk lamps. So guess what studio that's a reference to? This is an old jar that is very, very cold inside and has a lid, and then when that lid is opened, a fog will kind of roll over the top of the jar. And sometimes the fog that comes out of the jar will be mobile and kind of have a mind of its own, and it will seek out thermal energy to consume. This entry actually contains a functional RPG that you should go and play now. It only works on Windows, but go try it out. This is a projector that plays films in the style of a 1950s educational film, and essentially it guides the viewer through something that it thinks will happen to them. But if you follow any of the instructions given, that thing will happen to you, so you kind of guarantee what's going to happen to you. As long as you don't follow the instructions, you should be okay. This is a Bengal tiger that is disguised mimetically as a kitten. What does mimetically mean? A mimetic is something that makes you perceive reality differently. So when you look at it, you don't see a Bengal tiger, you see a kitten instead, and he uses this to hunt prey. This is a sticker made by the factory that just says 110%, and when you put it on a machine, that machine will now function, no matter its previous functioning ability, at 110%. This is essentially the doors in Monsters, Inc. So the door will open and it will actually connect to another door that is within 850 meters of it, and you can walk through the door. This is an allosaur skeleton that was recovered, found, and then put into a museum, and then it became animate, and it started acting and hunting for prey and catching prey and eating prey just like an allosaur dinosaur would. It's like the T-Rex from Night at the Museum, but it's an allosaur instead. This is a snow globe that has snow consistently falling in it. As long as more than one person is looking at it, it'll look pretty normal. But if only one person is looking at it, there's a chance that something horrific could happen inside the snow globe. This is a type of squid that can alter its chromatophores, which are the cells on its skin that can emit color, to be a hypnotic pattern that makes anything that looks at it think they're looking at a gigantic sea monster. This is a transferable form of cancer where if you contract it, you will succumb to it within 5 days. It's very, very, very aggressive. It'll also take over your mental functions. So there is some theory that it works as a hive mind and creates these cancer zombies. This is an empty plaque with the words Employee of the Month. When this is placed on the wall in a work area, another entity will show up. He or she will be the best employee at that company for the month. This is a disease that affects humans and other organisms very selectively. It's related to a extraterrestrial object, so all the symptoms that happen to people tend to be associated with the number 11. This is a typewriter that doesn't have any contacts for the keys, but is instead controlled by an electromagnetic pulse. When it increases in voltage, it can create a sound, and it's supposedly able to talk. And when you talk to the typewriter, it convinces you that it is someone who is now trapped in the typewriter and wants you to help them escape. This is a zoological garden that William Wadsworth has left to other scientists who are interested in learning about animals from other realities. Animals from other dimensions will show up. This is a bouncing playground rider. This one is a frog, and there is this what looks like white paint streaming down its eyes. When you sit on it and you ride it, you feel this sense of comfort and calm, and the paint starts to drain down out of this frog's eyes. What it's supposed to be doing is taking out your sadness or your pain and replacing it, and the paint is your emotions coming out of the frog. This is a fractal image, so it's just a pattern that repeats itself endlessly that has become a portal. This is a rock that floats and moves in a certain direction about 2 to 3 centimeters per second. And there is a name typically engraved in the stone, and the stone is on its way to the center of that target's chest. Nothing can stop it. It will go through the person. This is a vending machine that doesn't have any snacks or drinks in it, but it's operational, and if you use the keypad, you can punch in any number and it will give you a snack or a drink from another dimension. And there's a whole list of possible things that have come out of it. Some of them are awesome and some of them are dangerous. This is quite literally a coat that can summon a lot of arms. The person that wears it can summon as many arms as they want, and they have some control over the arms. This is an old style black and white TV. The only channel will be an old time game show called Cash or Ash. The person who turned the TV on is the contestant. The host will ask the contestant 3 questions. If you answer the questions correctly, something of value will appear. If the contestant doesn't answer any of the questions correctly, they will spontaneously combust. This is the body of someone who lived thousands of years ago that extra-dimensional organisms have retrofitted to be able to contain them. This is basically a real-life version of one of the cars from Cars. It's somewhat sentient, and it patrols the towns and neighborhoods of Poland. It can outrun any high-powered vehicle just because of its speed and insane maneuverability. The collection of gas that is attracted to heat, and it absorbs heat, and it likes to take heat away from organisms, particularly humans. It might be comprised of the souls of people who succumb to hypothermia. This is a colony of rats that go through a very long, extended process to create and grow these cancerous tumors that they eat. This is a cap that makes people unnoticeable. So if you put it on and you don't make any noise, no one will notice you. It's not that you will be invisible, you just won't be noticeable. This is a bracelet that will connect to your circulatory system and act as a third kidney, and it'll filter out your blood. This is a nondescript mid-century black telephone. It just has a constant stream of audio coming through the earpiece, and there's cryptic messages and lots of information that is important to the Foundation. This is a disc made of an unknown metallic substance with symbols etched in it. When the disc is in an environment for long enough, the symbols on the disc will start showing up in the environment around it, and anywhere where those symbols are will turn into the same metallic substance. This is connected to the Church of the Broken God. This is an ancient iron nail that when it's dropped on someone's shadow, that person is not able to lift up the nail or move so that their shadow is no longer covering the nail. So the nail kind of traps them in their place because it's on their shadow. This is a woman who doesn't eat or drink, but she has this hunger. The hunger will remotely combust objects and organisms around her, causing them to burn from outside in. She also acts like a phoenix whenever she is taken out, so she will burn, turn to ash, and then come back from the ashes. This is a kind of paint that when sprayed on a wall, it will turn all connecting walls into an organism, and that organism is capable of eating people. This is a woman that is completely normal, except her skin is completely resistant to any kind of physical attack, radiation attack, or temperature difference. She ages 75% slower than everybody else, and kind of has gone crazy because her skin is such that she can't feel anything that you normally would. This is a schooner ship, kind of like a sailing boat, that can travel time. The throttle has 3 different settings: forward, back, and back again. And forward goes forward in time, back goes back in time, and back again goes to the time that the schooner originally started from. This is a town where children are able to summon these projections of their invisible friends, and they're called chalk projections. Something really bad happens here, so big surprise. This is a mechanical spider. It's 54 feet in length, and the lowest part of it is 16 feet off the ground. It's basically just run by a rope and pulley system that can control itself autonomously, but it also has controls for human operation. This is a humanoid creature who walks around and will not stop walking around, and nothing can stop him from just continuing to meander. If you touch the meandering man, you'll be transported somewhere. No one knows where you go. This is a large, darkly colored humanoid creature with no discernible features other than what looks like eyes in the back of its head. And it uses these eyes to ward off prey and predators like butterflies do on the coloring of their wings. It's very strong and attacks on sight, but it avoids light at all costs. This is an alarm clock with a really elaborate machine connected to it, and when you hit the snooze button, it creates a temporal field around that alarm clock. It will slow down time so that inside the field 10 minutes pass, while outside only a few seconds have. These are ancient juggling sticks, and the longer you juggle them, the weirder things around you get. There was someone that juggled them for 35 hours and really weird stuff happened. This is a rock that is affected by gravity abnormally. Instead of falling down to the ground, it falls what we would consider east. So if you pick it up from the ground and you let it go, it will fall east consistently until it hits something that stops it from falling further. This is a pair of twins where it's a boy and a girl, and their brains are wirelessly, telepathically connected. So they experience everything that the other one does, no matter the distance. This is a humanoid creature whose body parts and limbs are constantly in flux. So they're always changing, shaping, reshaping, reforming. There's an Ethernet port on him that you can plug into, and it's a huge database of files. And whenever you change the files in the database, something changes on his body. This is a stone game board that when you touch it will trap you in a game with an opponent that it summons. The game is really complex and all the rules are listed on the entry. This is a Norse sword that causes hallucinations in the enemy of the person holding the sword to see an army of ghost soldiers fighting with the person wielding the sword. This is a pair of wedding rings that force the couple to act like the ideal American housewife or the all-American dad. And would sound nice at first, but it's forcing them to do that. So they're not doing it of their own volition. This is a massive rock that increases the effects of inertia. Anything that is not in a state of movement around the rock will become harder and harder to move, and anything that is in a state of movement around the rock will just continue to accelerate faster and faster and will be increasingly hard to stop. This is a sphere that regenerates any organic tissue that enters it. It also has a regenerative field around it, so any injuries that might happen to the organism during the process will be immediately healed. So people will go into this machine and come out looking like a Picasso painting, but still able to breathe and function. This is a machine that can seamlessly disassemble an organism. It basically breaks down the body into its different parts, and then it can reassemble that same organism seamlessly. It also allows for you to change out any parts. So this is ideal for any kind of transplant surgery. This is a 60-second hourglass that when you turn it over with the intention of turning it over again, you and everyone around you will experience a feeling of deja vu. And it's believed that when you turn it over the second time, it actually reverses time and you go back in time to the point at which you turned it over the first time. This is an unseen force that will attach itself to certain objects, and when people see those objects, they develop an intense obsession over them. This is a machine that dispenses any liquid as long as you put in 50 cents and can type out the name of it on the keypad. You can even get some liquids that we've never seen before and dispense them through the coffee machine dispenser into a cup. These are caterpillars that can secrete a substance that upon contact with anything flammable will cause that thing to combust instantaneously. And when it does combust, nothing is left after it's fully burned up. So it's believed that this is how the caterpillars eat. Anything that is burned will go to them and be used for sustenance. This is a Foundation site that was taken over by an anomalous entity known as Judgment. Her goal is to eliminate all of the SCPs contained in Site 03. This is a toy that has a setting that will completely disintegrate anything it comes in contact with. This is a pipe organ that, when played, causes all of the blood to leave your body. This is a tree that will infect other trees and turn them into its species using its root system. So it'll connect with them and then change them from the roots up. This is a bottle with a certain amount of liquid in it, and whenever you take a drop of that liquid and put it under a microscope, you'll be able to see a real live action scene. No drop has shown the same landscape or the same scene, and it's always something that's happening in what appears to be real time. This is an area of a national forest where if a hiker or an organism walks through it, they will be teleported to another part of the world. Hikers have disappeared in this national forest, and then they've appeared in places as far as France or Australia. Like, follow, and comment your favorite.